Welcome back to Garage Time. As you guys know, I really want to get my car to drive, but there's still a few more things I have to connect. This is one of them. Let's do it.
Garage Time.
If I'm going under the car, I like to strap it down to the stand. Even though the front tires are chalked, this really prevents the car from moving. It's not gonna fall off of here. And sometimes this method, lifting the car, is actually easier than the lift. I do have a lift. The Max Jacks is really awesome. I love this. I keep this post attached to the floor pretty much at all times. And then this tower over here, or this post, is on wheels. And so what has to happen, I have to just move this over around this side of the car, and then it bolts down here to these holes. And that process takes me about maybe 20, 30 minutes to torque it all down and level it. But getting the car up this high is high enough for me to get that selector rod goes inside that big hole there just underneath the torsion tube. That's all I need access to, so it should be real easy with just these two tire stands. And speaking about things that go through the tunnel, I forgot to add this wire. This is the cable that is for the starter. It goes right to the battery. It's high current cable. This is the one I removed from the car. I'm hoping that it's long enough. It looks like both ends have maybe been cut, so that's a concern, but there's only one way to find out, and that's to run it through, see if there's enough length on it. There's so many things that go through the tunnel on this car. I originally forgot the shift rod because it has to be installed before the engine goes in. This is take two. And also this would probably be a little bit more difficult to do when the engine's in place. So I'm gonna do it right now. The one thing I never pulled out of this car is this is the speedometer cable, and the end is broken off. So eventually it's gonna get replaced. But this moves pretty freely in the tunnel, goes all the way up to the dash where the speedometer is, obviously. So this is going to remain here. The actual starter cable goes through this grommet. This is a rubber grommet, the original one. You can see it kind of moving a little bit right there. So I need to pull that grommet off and then fish the cable through from the rear. There it is. Okay, take number two, I'm going to tape this metal rod onto the cable so I can fish it into the conduit. There's an electrical conduit inside the tunnel. It's like a tunnel in the tunnel. And this wire, it needs to be protected inside there from anything else that might be moving in the tunnel. So that's what I'm gonna try to do, is tape this on here to at least get it through that tunnel. Once it's through the tunnel in the tunnel, then I can pull it through. Okay, plan C is to use this, I think it's like a Lexan or acrylic material, and it's really kind of floppy but stiff enough to push. So I've kind of sharpened the end like a pencil, and I've drilled a couple holes in there. So if I can at least get this out the shifter hole, then I can put a wire through those two holes and pull an electrical wire through, and then we'll get to the next steps later. Okay, plan D is to replace the plastic rod with something a little bit more blunt on the end and a little bit narrower. I can feel the plastic one, I can feel it gripping against the rubber on the, it's like the rubber sleeving on the wire harness, and I really don't want to rip that sleeving or poke a hole in it. So this might be a little bit more gentle. Let's hope we don't break it off inside there. All right, plan E is to go take a look at the computer. I'm actually wondering if this battery cable does not go inside that conduit. I'm able to get the wooden dowel, it's a 1/4 inch. I'm able to get it most of the way through, but it's really tight, and I don't know how I'm gonna pull the cable, which is almost 1/2 inch. It looks like it's gonna just really fight for space inside that conduit. Unfortunately, it does go through the tunnel in the tunnel. So I'm going to need a lot more lubricant, grease, or something to get it to go through there. Okay, I almost made it all the way to the end. I had about this much of the stick sticking out. It's still coming up to like a hard stop somewhere in that harness. Maybe it's a loop of tape or something in there that's just preventing it from going through. So I don't want to push too hard. I'm going to switch now to this fish tape. This is like something you would use in your house. So it's got a metal end, it's kind of rounded, so it shouldn't damage anything. I'm gonna try to fish this through, at least get a pull wire in there. Okay, the fish tape actually went through pretty easy. It's right here, came out through the tunnel. That actually went in not too bad. There's the end of it. I ended up going through the shift hole. I'm not too worried about which hole it's coming through right now. Okay, that's a huge win. We got a pull wire all the way through here. There is a lot of silicone oil on that wire, but I'm definitely concerned about that solder joint coming off. So I'm going to go back and forth and kind of push it and pull it. Yes, it's in, we're through, or whatever. There it is. There it is attached right there. You can see the grommets in place, and this should reach or become close to the transmission or the starter. That's where this thing attaches. I can pull it if I need to. Replacing the starter cable is difficult with a capital D. Now, I don't recommend even changing the starter cable. The only reason why I did remove it is because I welded in some seat rails or seat mounts for my low mounted seats, the FIA seat mounts. That was welding right on the tunnel. It would have burned through the cable and the wire harness. So they were removed during welding. Now I'm just putting them back in. And I guess lessons learned are the fish tape works really well. I think there was just too much friction on the wooden rod. I had hopes on the wooden rod, but it just really grabbed the existing wire harness. The fish tape went through pretty easy, and I used the silicone oil. You know, don't use Vaseline or any sort of petroleum oil because it'll degrade the insulation over time. So you could use soap, I think. Soap is good. I tried soap with the wood, but it just sort of soaked it up and it didn't lubricate enough. So, and then certainly use a pull wire. I don't know if it's even possible to do it with the transmission in. If you have terminal ends on, that's another one of my problems. I have to put terminal ends on this. Terminal ends would make it even more difficult in my opinion. So it takes a fair amount of force to pull it through. Okay, so now what this video is supposed to be about is the shifter. So I'm gonna put the shifter rod in. I did get the new bushings from URO, so let's install those on the bench and then we'll put it in. Yeah, this is the shift rod, and it's got the adjustable coupler on the end with a clamp bolt there. And then this piece here is the portion that goes underneath the shifter lever. And this is removable, so I can slide this off, replace this little nylon guy right here. This feels to me pretty worn. I mean, it does slide, but it kind of wiggles a little bit. So I have a new one of those. Now's the time to change it. So let's remove this bolt and take it off. It looks like it only goes on one way. Huh, there we go. I hate to do it, but just a little dusting of silver paint. Had I thought ahead, I would have had this plated. Yeah, the old bushing and the new bushing look like they're the same size. Fit's about the same, to be honest with you. I think it's going to shrink a little bit when I squeeze it in the bracket. Oh, there we go. I think this goes this way, and then this guy. I'm gonna put a little bit of Loctite on there because I don't really want that falling out. This is blue Loctite. It's not permanent. And I'm just gonna finger tight this because I think I'm gonna pull this off when I slide it in the car. Okay, just let that sit for a minute. And then on this end, this is where the shift coupler is. Now these bushings are completely worn out. You can see that one's fractured right there. This one is just oblong. You can see how much motion there is. So I have another coupler. This one I bought used, but it has the bronze or brass bushings in there, so there's no play whatsoever. This is a really nice coupler, which probably won't wear out as much, and it's going to give a little bit better shift feel, hopefully. The other bushing to be concerned with is this one right here, and I've taken this off and tried it. This doesn't show any wear at all, so I don't even think I'm going to replace this one. It fits inside this cup really, really nice.
Well, that was easy.
Now that the shift rod is in, I'm just going to lube it up with some of this. This is black lithium grease. I don't think it's going to eat the bushing, and it should last a long time in there. So I'm just going to put a tiny bit on the bushing I just installed. So it looks like we have a shifter now. There's fifth, and then there's reverse. So obviously it feels really loose because there's no transmission attached to it, and the throw is a lot longer than it normally will be, but that's in there. I also opted for some stainless steel screws here instead of the pan head ones. Needs to be cleaned, but that's basically what you get. Then back here you can see how that linkage just moves. So rotates and translates. Another thing I have is this rubber coupling boot that goes on, I think this is the one that goes on the inside. I think there's an inner and an outer, but this is also from URO, and it should fit right over that coupler pointing towards the rear of the car. And there's the boot installed. It's right there. The one thing that's kind of annoying me though is that this, if I take it off again, this sheet metal is kind of bent up right there. That's typically caused when you remove the engine and you just pinch it or you jack it up incorrectly. So that's supposed to be round. Mine's like an oval or a teardrop. So I'm going to hammer that down just a little bit because I love using the hammer. Okay, it's a little bit better now. You can see instead of that teardrop shape, it's now a little bit more round. Going to have to touch this up with some black paint. I'll just brush that on, but it's much more round than it used to be. And that's how it looks with the rubber boot on. So let's see what we got done on the list. I know that the starter cable was not on the list because I forgot it, but that would be crossed off the list. I can write it in. And then for the transmission, install shifter, we did that. Adjust the linkage. I'm not able to adjust the linkage until I get the transaxle back in. So one thing was easy today, installing the shifter and the linkage was pretty easy. The difficult thing, which was kind of unexpected, was that starter cable. That was a real bear. But I'm glad it's over with. I may ultimately have to change it again if it's too short. I may end up relocating the battery into the smuggler's box, in which case it's going to be plenty long enough. Or I also may be putting in a on-off switch on that cable, so that would also make it long enough. So we'll see on that one. If I did have to replace it again, now that there's a pull wire in there, it would go much, much easier. If you want to support the channel, don't forget Patreon. Patreon is a membership service, additional content over there. Ask me anything over there as well. I've helped a lot of guys with their builds, and also t-shirts. If you haven't got a t-shirt already, check it out. It's through Teespring. You order it and it goes right to your house. I'll leave the description, or I'll leave a link in the description for each of those. Have a good weekend. Take care.